Excellent. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing AMA at the 8th Annual Startup of the Year Summit. I'm Rich Maloy from Established, the company that powers the Startup of the Year program and the summit. And I am truly thrilled to be joined today by Jason Rathje, Director of AFVentures. Thanks, Jason, for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rich.
Yep, always good. Always good to talk about what's going on over at AFVentures and AFWERX. And before we dive into that, quick programming note. The way this is going to work, if this is the first AMA that you've been a part of for our summit, is that chat in Zoom is disabled. And so please do ask your questions of Jason in the Pathable and the Summit's site chat. We will, and I will kick things off with an overview of Jason's background and and some initial questions here. But then again, we want you to be asking the questions. So if you have that, please put it in the chat and we'll get it answered. And if you're on Twitter, of course, you can tweet to us at #StartupOfYear or at @StartupOfYear. And AFVentures is at AFVentures1 and AFWERX is at AFWERX. And so without further ado, let me formally introduce Jason. Jason has a bachelor's and master's in aeronautical and astronautical engineering from MIT and a PhD in strategy and policy from Stanford. So he's smart. And we're happy to have him here. He is currently the director of AFVentures. AFVentures is the commercial investment arm of the Air Force. It's a part of AFWERX. So if you hear me talking about AFWERX, I always describe AFWERX as the innovation arm of the Air Force. But AFVentures is the commercial investment arm, and they create simple pathways for commercial innovators and private investment capital to help the Department of Air Force solve its problems. And so with that, everybody, Jason Rathje. So let's get started here, right? Let's start like way at a high level, right? And that AFVentures is looking to invest in dual use technologies that will solve Air Force problems. So let's talk about one, what dual use means, and two, how the startups that are watching today can get started.
Absolutely. And I think this is really at the crux of what we're all about at AFVentures. The mission of AFVentures is to leverage commercial technologies to drive better capability to the department faster. It's all about the fact that the majority of R&D work happens outside of the DoD fence line. We know what you're working on, who you're working on it for, what their needs and requirements are, what your pathways to recurring revenue look like, what your growth objectives look like, what your revenue models, your business models are all set up and predicated outside of selling to the DoD. And so one of the things that we strive to do is leverage your innovations, your capabilities, your technologies for the bringing value to the department by working under the auspices of understanding who you are and what you're doing, and then seeing where there's a fit with the Air Force mission. The concept of dual use is really all about that. It's the development of core competencies in businesses that can be utilized for sales to the department or to the commercial sector. And I use that term very specifically because we know that the development effort required for the Air Force is not going to be a one-for-one comparison to what you're going to need to do on the commercial side. If you're a cybersecurity company selling to a big bank, or that's your B2B scales approach for your first market vertical, that we know that the Air Force requirements are going to be different. The capability, doing some crazy AI-based cybersecurity technologies are going to be the same across both sectors. But what we don't believe is that your development efforts are going to be a one-for-one comparison. So we want to leverage the underlying technology that you're working on, you're developing. But we want to help pay for the additional development efforts that are required to get it over the fence line and get it into the Air Force. And that's where we can help support that dual use part of your business model. The way to get started in that, for us, the easiest way for a startup to get started is through our open topic approach. AFVentures has a number of financial offerings and instruments that we use to work with companies like yourselves. The most common, the most well-known is our SBIR program. You may have heard that this is the AFWERX SBIR program or the open topic All of that is now under AFVentures. AFVentures is a newly formed division of AFWERX, but it's the same group. We've been working on this collectively now for the last 2+ years. So that program allows any company with any commercial technology, any idea that you have to pitch the Air Force on how this capability is going to impact an Air Force mission. Out of all of the companies that apply to work with us through our front door, about 300 are awarded a phase 1 contract. And that kicks off your journey with the department. Once you're in the front door, once you're on with the Air Force, now you have the opportunity to work with a number of Air Force customers, a number of potential verticals that may need that capability that you're providing. And that's really how we could start our relationship with you as a department.
And I like that the acknowledgement that the solution, while you're trying to solve the same problem, say at a bank and at the Air Force, the implementation is going to be different, slightly different, because the Air Force has different needs, whereas banks' needs are going to be generally the same across banks, right? But that you pay for that, right? So this is a contract, not a grant, right?
Precisely right, precisely right. You know, a common misconception that we get all the time in the SBIR program is that is that the SBIR program is a grant program, that SBIR is a grant funding activity. It is for many federal agencies. There's 11 that execute their own SBIR programs. For the DoD, it's a contract. We're a mission agency. We fund contracts for development efforts, and that's a big, you're spot on, exactly right. Every phase 2 contract, every contract over $50,000 that we do is dedicated for a development effort. And so we will pay for research and development effort, test and evaluation of developing, integrating, and deploying your system into the Air Force mission. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to get you past the valley of death. We're going to be able to pay for the implementation, but we're also going to bring the right people to bear. I mean, you know, we've had a few conversations about this in the past, that the critical part is not just the funding, it's who's coming to the table, who's the customer, not us. We're an investment organization. What we want to do is connect you with those people in the Air Force that are going to be buying products and services from you if you're successful in your development work. Right. And that's a critical part of the process. We have to connect you to that user, the operator, the funding agency, the procurement agency. Sometimes they're all the same. Often they're all very different. Yeah. And they all have to be part of your sales journey inside of the department.
Yeah. You know, maybe, you know, one thing that we learned as part of for Established, you know, and for those that are not aware, but Established has gone through this process, right? So we're eating our own dog food, if you will, to support the work that AFWERX and AFVentures is doing. But one of the things that we learned was that with the government funding, the contract and the funding are different, and they're different organizations, and you have to have both, but you can have one without the other. And this is unlike in a corporation where they're married, right? And so just understanding that split, that, you know, in how, so could you talk a little bit more about that split, and then also how AFVentures makes that easier?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And this is how the DoD allocates its programs. You know, the funding, where the funding comes from, executed through the president's budget, affirmed and appropriated by the Congress, is different than the execution of that funding. And so the contracting activity, the acquisition activity. And so, you know, when we look at our funding, what funding do we have available? It's dedicated funding for RDT&E activities. It's a certain type of money. We can only spend it on certain activities. What it's not is procurement or operations and maintenance and sustainment funding. Those are all different buckets of funding. The Congress appropriates different funding based upon how the taxpayer wants to see the funding being spent. And so that's a big part of what Congress does. What we have to do is connect companies through that journey. And so we can fund R&D until the cows come home, but that doesn't mean you're going to get to recurring revenue inside of the department, because non-recurring is a different color of money, often owned by a different organization than that what we call color of money, that the money that means it's a recurring revenue. We call that operations funding, O&M funding. And so that funding is a different category, often held by a different organization. So what we want to do is say, hey, we want to bring you in. We want to see what's happening in the commercial. We want to leverage these incredible technologies. But very quickly after you're in that front door, it's all about connecting you to those sales points. Yeah. And those are going to be different organizations. And we do that through a number of events. We hold colliders. We send out dossiers and portfolios to few people who are interested. You can go on our website and check out our mission focus areas, which showcase what people might be interested in. So there's lots of different ways for you to connect with customers, and that's certainly something that's a pivotal part, an important part of our process.
It's so critical for companies that are not used to working with the DoD. Understanding that AFVentures and AFWERX are set up to help make those contacts inside of the Air Force. All good, Jason, on the...
Yeah, I missed the first 10 seconds there. I'm sorry, my headphones died on me.
It's all good. I was just underscoring points that you had made there. We do have a question from somebody here. Are there other financing routes that AFVentures has other than SBIR open topics? If so, what are they?
So for the past 6 months, we've been supporting the department's COVID relief efforts. And so we have a number of opportunities on our website right now. There's one posted actually as of Thursday last week, a commercial solutions offering for technologies and capabilities related to the COVID-19 relief mission. I believe we have 2 currently, one for rapid point of care testing and one for glove development and manufacture. So there's other opportunities out there. We are also working on a number of follow-on activities, follow-on financing activities. We are really interested in pursuing credit and lending options. We want to follow companies through the entire scale and growth cycle. We know in later stages, having a cap table that includes venture debt, especially for hardware-backed companies, is something that people are becoming more and more interested in. What is that right mix of capital, and how can we as a department help for you to achieve that? Now, all of that stuff is still in the works, but as those things become available, certainly we'll continue to post them on our website and hold other avenues for publicizing the other options that are available for companies.
Yep, absolutely. No, I love that. I love that you're starting to think about venture debt and some of the other capitalization options that are out there. In the commercial solutions opening for COVID is a great segue into another question I think that comes up regularly, which is that that AFVentures and AFWERX are looking for the whole airman, right? And so it's not just about, in this case, COVID, right? It's also not just about airplanes and maintenance, right? But that you were looking at the whole airman, and an organization that has over 600,000 people in it. So can you talk a little bit about some solutions and how people can start to think about that what they're doing is a fit and maybe a fit for the Air Force?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to think about it. I would say the mission focus areas are always a great place to go look for how what you're doing might fit into that overall Air Force mission set. One of the other things that I like to discuss when this question comes up is one of our other divisions at AFWERX. So AFWERX has 3 organizations within it. You can think, Alphabet and Nest and Google and Waymo. So AFVentures is one division. We work with companies through these processes and financial opportunities that we can provide, but we work heavily and hand in hand with our Spark division. So there are 80 Spark cells across the globe. It is a great way for you to interact with airmen who are local to you. So if you've got a capability, you're interested in what airmen might be able to do with it, you want to have a couple conversations with folks who are on the front line. It could be a maintainer, a logistician, a flight nurse, a pilot. There's lots of different areas of the Air Force, and a great way to understand what the Air Force needs, what we're working on, and what we're interested in is to just contact your local Spark cell. Again, go to the AFWERX website. You can click on the Spark cells, and you can check out how to work with and find out who is in your local area and who might be a good person to reach out to.
Excellent, excellent. And we'll make sure that we put the AFWERX website in the chat. Um, and, uh, and somebody had actually, while you were talking about that, somebody had actually just asked, how do you make contact with a local Spark cell? And so go to the AFWERX website and get that information and look for Spark events that are happening. And from established, we also have done colliders where we match the SIBR companies, the phase one companies, with Spark cells and the airmen that are on the front lines working on trying to solve problems. And so you got to get in the front door, do that phase one, and that actually ties in with another question from our audience here. Is I've heard that it can be difficult to work with DoD organizations. How do you respond to this critique?
Absolutely, 100% can be difficult to work with DoD organizations. I'll tell you, the way that we think about this is just like any large organization, any large business, it's going to be difficult sometimes to get people to change the way that they like to do business, what they're used to. If you ever want a great book, you can read John Boyd's biography, where they talk about his attempt to get the Air Force to switch over to the F-16 fighter aircraft. So this is just one of a number of areas where we have to work as a department to get better at working with new innovative ideas and technologies. Now, the way that what we've seen as a response to the critique, which I think is apt and accurate, is that there have been a lot of movement in DoD coming around. I mean, I remember when I went out to start my graduate work, DIU had just started. And we've seen an incredible change in the way that companies have been able to work with the DoD, and the DoD has started to work with these companies as DoD has understood what these companies really can do and what they can provide to the department. With AFWERX, when we started this in 2018, the first time we ran our first open topic, we had 168 proposals. That was at the time the record, and we thought we were doing really well. This last round for phase one, we've had 1,600 proposals. Wow. So we've seen an exponential growth, and I don't necessarily think that's only because we've gotten better at opening the doors to industry, but I think it's because we've started to see a change in our customer base, in our markets, in our Air Force markets. They're willing to buy products and services. Every relationship's not going to be the same. You think the DoD, you think the Department of the Air Force, you think the Air and Space Force. Every unit, every squadron is going to be different on how they work with companies. Every PEO is going to be different. But what I will say is we've seen a significant rise in interest, and that interest has been coupled with a change in culture and certainly a change in focus and relationships with small innovative vendors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and AFWERX has done an amazing job to make the DoD easier to work with. And before, I've got two more questions queued up here, but I still just want to pull on the open topic thread, right? Because this was an experiment, right? And and so you've finalized some research about the open topic and its remarkable results. And so I'd love to put a spotlight on that right now.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. We started this as an experiment in June of 2018. And so, I would say it's always going to be an experiment. It's always going to be a process for getting better and improving on. But we've been doing research alongside of it, like an experiment. And so, we're very excited to be releasing some pretty novel research here in the upcoming days that's in draft format, but to start to get it out to the community to solicit feedback. And what that research shows is doing a causal econometric analysis on the open topic program as an experiment. We find that the open topic blows away the conventional approach for increasing not only the probability of raising venture capital. We find companies that go through the open topic and are win an open topic award, phase one from us, have a 72% increase in the likelihood of receiving venture capital.
Wow.
They're also 45% more likely in receiving a DoD contract. They are 200% more likely in producing a technology that results in a patent. So they're more likely to invest in earlier stage R&D. And so we found these metrics only assessing 2017 to 2019 and comparing the open topic to conventional topics. And so, while we say that, we also know that there's a place for non-open topic work, that in the long run, there's a balance between the processes that we have to play with the open topic and some of the other topics we continue to award and push forward as a department. And so I think the research really shows the power of commercial. It shows the power of innovative companies, and when we can access that incredible talent and development works and ideas and scale those appropriately, that we're going to see big returns, not only for the DoD, but for private industry as well. I'll say that historically, the SBIR program across the DoD has not had a good or any statistical increase in the likelihood of receiving venture capital. And so for those of us who've been around investment for quite some time, to say that winning a DoD contract increases the probability of winning VC is, I think, a very counterintuitive finding. And so that's one I'm particularly proud of in the results.
Not only is it counterintuitive, but it runs contrary to the common wisdom in venture investing, which is don't invest in somebody that's going after government customers, because the sales cycles are long and it's so hard to work with them, and it's just for services and for grants, and it's not for real technology. And I'll tell you just anecdotally, putting my investor hat on, the pitches that I've seen a number of pitches come in where part of their pitch is the AFVentures contract that they received. And I love seeing that in there, especially when I didn't even know that company before. They didn't, I didn't have a connection to them. Like, oh man, that's awesome, good job. So definitely, that's awesome research. I can't wait to read that when it comes out. All right, we've got a couple of great questions here that I want to make sure that I get to. And I lost my place in the questions. Here we go. Okay, is AFVentures planning on coordinating activities with DoD's Trusted Capital Initiative? If so, how do AFVentures portfolio companies connect to them?
Absolutely. So we've got partners across OSD. DIU is a close partner of ours. Certainly the Trusted Capital initiatives, we've worked with them to continue to mature what that capability means, and how, as a service, one of three departments, we can continue to work with OSD on the Trusted Capital initiatives. The best way.
Can you talk? So I don't even know what the OSD Trusted Capital Initiative is. Could you talk a little bit about that? And it's awesome that we've got somebody so informed in the audience. But
so Trusted Capital Initiative, it used to be called the Trusted Capital Marketplace. It really was an opportunity to bring in investors, trusted investors that have been pre-screened, and that those investment capital would be made available to companies who are pursuing national security problems. So it was a program put on by OSD, and it continues to mature what the capability is, how it's being applied with the services. For us, OSD has been a close partner through this process. I don't know if you're familiar with how the services and the department interplay, but the office has been doing an incredible job leaning forward in this community, talking about the value of bringing in new and novel technologies. DIU is an OSD joint organization. So we've worked with all of these organizations as they've been stood up and continue to engage. I would say the best way to engage, and something that we offer to all of our companies, is after you're in the front door, after you go through phase one, we provide more illumination onto ways of partnering with these other types of organizations, opportunities for you to hear from them. I'm sure I would do the TCI program an injustice trying to describe where they're at with that program right now. But I will say that we do make those things available to folks who are in the ecosystem, so that they can have access to that. And then happily, we've got strong partners in the services too. So AFWERX, Army Futures Command. I mean, this is an all of us ecosystem. It's on 80% of the R&D, Rich, right, happens outside of the DoD fence line. I would say there's maybe like 3% of the DoD that's focusing on that. So, we need more folks in this game, not less. And that's certainly something that we continue to push for. Strong partnership across the department and the services.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Another question from the audience here what are the typical timelines for getting funding? This might also be a good opportunity to talk about the big, medium, and small, or sorry, small, medium, and large bets.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the way that we operate is we've got kind of a three-stage process. Phase one is a $50,000 3-month contract. That's any company with any idea can pitch us on how they can work with the Air Force. If you're successful in being awarded a contract in that process, then you enter into your 3-month period of performance. During that time, you look at technical feasibility, customer discovery work. At the end of your phase of your 3-month action.
I want to jump in here, right? Because this is something I always tell to startups is like, what business is going to pay you to do customer discovery, right? A 3-month, $50,000 contract to do customer discovery, to find your customer in the Air Force. So I just love that. So anyway, go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. Really what it is, it boils down to is, for us, it's about technical feasibility. It's not what we want to understand is, hey, if we invest money, real money into this effort, where is it going to live in the Air Force? Who's going to be working on it with you? And how is it going to integrate into what they're doing? Those are big questions. Those are tough technical questions. Yeah. It's not just finding, hey, like, I think this is my TAM in the Air Force looks something like I'm working with digital, right? It's no, we need a report that shows, how are you going to go through the continuous ATO process to integrate your system onto, Kessel Run. So, that's the critical part of this is it is absolutely 100% customer discovery. I would say it's tough tech customer discovery, right? Who is the tech that you're working with? How are you integrating with them? Because that's what we're paying for. We're paying for an effort. We're not, and I like to say this all the time, we don't fund companies. Companies can have 15 phase ones and all of them could fail. We'll fund number 16 if we also agree that it's a good idea and it gets through the evaluation, right? So just because you fail on an effort doesn't mean that we have anything holding out anything negative about you as a company. Yep. So in this area, we're complementary. So when you get to phase two, which happens at the end of your phase one, now we're paying for up to $750,000 for a base phase two effort to do the prototype action. We fund about 100 of those every 4 months. Those contracts can go on to raise additional matched funding through follow-on contract processes. And the biggest one of those is called the Strat5 program. So the Strat5 program is where we'll fund up to $15 million of SBIR funds for a later stage development effort to help you accelerate into programs of record. It's all about scale. That's where we want to say, look, this is a strategic program. This is where we need to invest our capital. And what we require for those are dedicated matched funding. Along the way, in phase two and beyond, you have a customer. You have an investment organization in AFVentures, but you have a customer in the Air Force. After you do the base phase two, we need to make sure that they're committed to the program. And so we ask them to go dollar for dollar with us into the Strat5 program. We're also looking for you to stay commercial. We want you to have a strong commercial footing. We want you to be successful outside of the Air Force. And so for that, we also ask you to bring in additional funding from private investors. So as these programs are released, certainly we'll have announcements going out for those programs. Always check out the AFWERX website, and that's where you can find out more about the process and how to work with us.
Yep. Awesome. So last question, we've got 1 minute left. Can you briefly describe the TAC5 program and when it will roll out?
Absolutely. So TAC5 program is a smaller scale of the Strat5 program. We know not everything requires $15 million or the scrutiny and time it takes to award a $30 million total government contract, which is not as quick as our 30, 60, 90-day averages for phase ones, phase twos, and direct to phase twos. But we know that there's more capability to be had for smaller contracts. So think of TAC5, it's more of a tactical version of that strategic program. We plan on rolling that more information about that out as soon as it's prepared. The hope is that we get that out within the next few months at a minimum. So Dr. Roper has discussed this. It's in the public memo. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about the program, there'll be some specifics for all of our extension programs. I'll finish with this. You have to have had a phase two. So the easiest way, if you're new to the program, to get in is sign up for the next phase one. Pre-release for that solicitation happens on the 24th of this month, with solicitation opening in December and closing in January. So please be on the lookout for that. And that is a great way to start your journey with us.
Awesome. Awesome. So phase one, then a phase two. You could also do a direct to phase two, where my fingers, there they are, right? And then the options from there, strat-fi, tact-fi.
Absolutely.
Cool. Amazing. Amazing. All right. We've gone a little bit over here. Thank you everybody for your time today. Jason, thank you so much for sharing time with us today. We are grateful for you and all that you're doing for our country through bringing innovation into the Air Force, into the DoD. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Rich. And thank you everyone who joined. Looking forward to working with you.
Yes. Awesome. This room is about to close, so please jump over to the next session. The next session is a Startup of the Year Alumni Spotlight. It's going to be awesome. Yesterday's Alumni Spotlight was amazing, inspirational stories from founders. So please jump over to that. And thank you all and have a great day.